Hello, this is State Representative Mike Bayham, starting off a new program, what we're going to try to do to help raise awareness to the voters of St. Bernard about important issues. We're going to call it One Take, and the reason why we're going to call it One Take is we're only going to take one video take of these things. So if a stammer stumbles, whatever, we're just going to roll right through.
You stumbled and stammered when you said that.
Well, I had a speech impediment growing up, but that's okay.
Oh, well, now you make me feel bad, Mike.
I didn't think that was possible. With me today is Julie Emerson, who is the chairwoman of the Ways and Means Committee. That is one of the most powerful committees in the Louisiana legislature. She represents Karen Crow, the Lafayette area, in the legislature, and she is on her third and final term as the state representative. So we're going to talk over the next few days about the 4 amendments on the ballot on March 29th, which is Saturday. But we're going to tackle the first one, the most important one, which is Amendment number 2. And that's the one I've gotten the most questions about, and arguably that's the most important one that will be on the ballot on March 29th. So Chairwoman Emerson is who handled the bill in the legislature, the amendment. So we're going to ask her a bunch of questions about the amendment and try to clear up some of the issues that have come up. So first, Julie, if you don't mind me calling you that.
As long as I can call you Mike.
Well, you've called me worse. Julie's an old friend of mine from our Republican activism days. So
Mike serves on the Ways and Means Committee with us, so he had a front row seat to all the debates, and he's a great member of the committee and a great representative for St. Bernard.
Well, very kind of you.
Appreciate it.
So, so this amendment does a bunch of things. Is there a reason why so many different moving parts are in this one amendment?
Yeah, thanks for the question. Like you said, Mike, Amendment 2, a really important piece of fiscal reform that we put on the ballot. I appreciate Governor Landry tackling the hard stuff in his first year, and I was definitely honored to be a part of crafting this legislation. Now, as you know, back last year in the regular session, we had a debate about having a constitutional convention. We did not quite get that across the finish line. There was a lot of back and forth about how we're going to do it, when we're going to do it. So ultimately, after we kind of broke in the off season, we realized that we can tackle one article in a kind of a single subject situation. And so we decided to tackle Article 7, and that's what Amendment 2 deals with. Now, Article 7 has been amended, I believe, the whole Constitution has been amended about 300 something times since it was written or adopted in 1974.
So it's got more tape on it than a mummy.
Right, and then 80% of those 300 plus amendments dealt with Article 7. So over the years, it's just kind of become cluttered. Maybe some outdated things that don't really apply anymore. So we just decided to take a wholesale approach to rewriting it, and again, trying to put the state on a much better path moving forward from a fiscal standpoint.
Okay. Yeah, that Article 7 is the largest of all of the articles in the Constitution. I think it's about 40% of the state Constitution.
That sounds about right.
So moving along, one of the big criticisms that's been circulated on this bill that it will somehow affect the tax-exempt nature of religious houses, churches, and so forth. Can you clear that up?
Yeah, thanks for bringing that up. As you know, I grew up in the Baptist church, very devout Baptist. You're a very devout Catholic, as are most people in our legislative body. So certainly we would never do anything to hurt churches in that way. So I'm happy to clear that up. What we did, there was analysis done of state constitutions across the United States, and we were told that we had absolutely the broadest language of any state dealing with churches and nonprofits and really all property tax exemptions in our Constitution. So we decided to take a little bit of a look at it and decide what should be in the Constitution, what should really be in the tax code. So we moved most of those exemption language into the tax code, still with a 2/3 protection, 2/3 vote, gubernatorial signature. But when the time came to discuss it, we found a couple of things that everyone mostly agreed that we should leave in the Constitution. One of those was the homestead exemption, which certainly everyone in Louisiana enjoys. And another thing was protecting our religious freedoms through making sure that property owned by churches is still in the Constitution. So we got together with some church organizations that came to the table during the session. We worked out some language. Everyone seemed very happy. After we got out of the session, a few more questions arose, and some of that dealt with various ministries. Maybe someone has a downtown food bank or something that's not necessarily on the church campus. Now, at the very least, that would still be protected in the statute by a 2/3 vote. But certainly our desire is to protect those religious ministries in the Constitution. So kind of where we stand right now is the churches, I feel, are very well protected still in the constitutional language. And the fact of the matter is that if you are enjoying a property tax exemption now, you will enjoy it after this amendment passes as well. Nothing's changing about their current status of protection. So church language still in the Constitution, other language moved into statute, supermajority protection. I have absolutely committed and heard some of the concerns of some of these other churches, and I've committed to addressing the language again in this next session, maybe broadening it a bit to make sure that we cover every aspect of the ministry of the church, and have now shared that language with some of the organizations that had concerns, and I very much look forward to working with them to make sure that they're comfortable.
Well, I'll make sure that I'm not excommunicated for supporting this amendment.
Yeah, I totally understand.
I wouldn't be the first politician from our area to have been excommunicated by the Catholic Church, but
look, I'll tell you, we work.
Try not to be number two.
Yeah, we work with Tom Costanza, great guy, represents the Council of Bishops here at the state capitol. He was very comfortable with the language that we use and put into the Constitution. So, I feel positive he won't be excommunicated. And I certainly believe that my letter, I certainly hope that my letter to my church will not be canceled. That's what we call it in the Baptist world.
Oh.
Our letter.
Return to sender, address unknown. So let's talk about what I think is the best aspect of this amendment is the impact it will have for our seniors, 65 or older.
Absolutely.
This will deliver a very large tax break, correct?
Yeah, so as you know, in the tax session in November, we increased the standard deduction for everyone. It was at $4,500, and we increased it to $12,500. In this amendment, that is actually doubled for our seniors. So if you're 65 or over, you'll have the first $25,000 of your money tax free from the state income tax standpoint. And then additionally, with specific retirement income, the standard deduction is $6,000. We doubled that as well to $12,000. So a single filer would enjoy their first $37,000 tax free.
And if
they're
you're
65
married,
over and retired.
and if you're two people who are married at the age of 65, they both receive retirement income, they would get a $74,000 standard deduction.
That's right, because it would be $37,000 each if they're 65 and over and retired. So that would mean $74,000 for a married couple. Yeah.
So unless you're Elon Musk's mom, you're not going to pay taxes probably to the state.
I would say that the vast majority of our seniors would enjoy a tax-free income there.
Now, there's a very complicated area.
I wish I could fix that on the federal level, but I can't do that here in the state legislature.
Well, we're working on that. Congressman Steve Scalise and my friend from college, Speaker Mike Johnson, are working on that as well. Now, there's a aspect of this amendment that I've gotten a lot of questions. It's very technical oriented, and I think it affects potentially budget shortfalls for Louisiana, and that is the merging of the budget and revenue stabilization funds.
Yeah.
Can you touch on that?
Yeah, absolutely. So the state of Louisiana has two sort of reserve rainy day savings funds. One is the budget stabilization, which is the official rainy day fund, and then one that's called the revenue stabilization fund. Now the revenue stabilization fund is actually relatively new. That was instituted in 2018. And how that fund gets money in it is when you combine the corporate income tax and the franchise tax together, any collections over 600 million of those two gets deposited in the revenue stabilization fund. So it is recurring revenue coming to the state, but we cap what goes into the state general fund, and then frankly revenue stabilization is just kind of sitting there. For the first time last year, we did, and you probably remember, we did utilize part of that to kind of bolster our infrastructure. But really at this point, and Representative Walt Leger, kind of near your area in 2018, was the one who actually did that bill for revenue stabilization, and he's kind of laughed and said, man, I just never really dreamed that we would be exceeding 600 million at the rate that we are so quickly. There's several $1 billion in that fund now. So really we thought it was prudent, speaking with some of the credit rating agencies, we thought it was prudent to combine those two funds, leave a healthy balance of, it's been recommended that we leave 25% of the state general fund number in that balance, which is what we're going to do. And then basically dissolve revenue stabilization and just have that one fund account. And then we also remove the cap, so then in moving forward, that overage will be deposited as it is recurring revenue into the state general fund, which will further help us to reduce our rates moving forward.
We won't have to do these special sessions to tackle budget shortfalls as often as that's happened in the past, correct?
Yeah, I certainly believe so.
All right. So another big aspect of this bill is that it pays down a significant amount of teacher pension debt, correct?
Yeah, that's right. And it's interesting. I've had a lot of questions from some of my teacher friends about, this gives a teacher pay raise, but there's a lot of other stuff in it. So what's going on with that? So let me kind of explain why it's incorporated into this amendment. The state of Louisiana, as we kind of mentioned before, has a lot of different little pots of money. We mentioned those two savings accounts, but there's some other funds that have built up over time, to the tune of billions of dollars out there. And one of these funds, a lot of the money, or most of the money, really came from the tobacco settlement, so it wasn't even really taxpayer dollars, it was from a settlement with the state. And so there was $2 billion in this fund, and it was earning interest, but it was not earning interest enough for us to constitute keeping it and not utilizing it to pay down debt that we were paying a higher interest on. Now these retirement funds for state employees, specifically on this one, the teachers, they do accumulate debt moving forward as people retire, right? We are responsible for paying their retirements. They also assume some debt kind of initially when some of them consolidated 40 or 50 years ago. So we've just had kind of a series of debt accumulation there. So we decided to take that $2 billion in that fund that was sitting there and pay down the debt of the teachers' retirement system. So not only does it facilitate a teacher pay raise, but it also puts that retirement system in a much better fiscal situation moving forward, much more financially stable. Now we made a smaller payment a couple of years ago, and both the state and the locals do recognize the savings when we make those debt payments. So we asked the local school boards to please facilitate a teacher pay raise with that. Some of them did, some of them didn't. So that's why when we did this amendment and we made that payment, in the statutory companion that Representative Bacala authored, it does mandate a pay raise with those savings that they recognize.
Now, teachers won't be the only beneficiaries of this amendment if it's passed. The support staff,
yes, teachers
will also
and support
get a
staff.
benefit.
I'm glad you mentioned that. I've seen a lot of folks out there who work very hard in a supporting role in our educational facilities and our schools. They kind of have a little bit of an outcry of, man, you always talk about the teachers, but what about the support staff? And so they are also included in this raise, and I really appreciate the work that they do. So I'm glad you recognize them.
Well, one of my biggest supporters was a retired janitor with the school system, so she has done she's been a constant reminder in my ear about don't forget the support staff, and they certainly play a key role in keeping these schools running, and we appreciate it, and I'm glad that they are being taken care of in this amendment. The competitive nature of Louisiana, one of the reasons why I believe we haven't had the same growth as the other states in the South is our tax structure.
Yeah.
Our tax rates and so forth. Will this help us become more competitive with a Texas and a Florida, or an Alabama even?
Yeah, absolutely. And look, I think that the way that we continue to be competitive in that regard is to try to continuously lower our rates. You know, we did lower the income tax rate to a flat 3% in this session, which I believe right now, of those that have an income tax rate, we're either the lowest or the second lowest. North Carolina might be a little bit lower. Of course, Texas, Florida, and Tennessee are all at 0, and that's where Louisiana wants to be. And so, passing this amendment, making better fiscal decisions with some of these funds that we have locked up, paying down some of this debt, putting some of this recurring revenue back into the general fund instead of just sitting there locked up, in these funds that don't have any particular purpose. It is so much more prudent and so much better for us to use taxpayer dollars wisely, try to pay off some of these things, and then try to lower some of these rates so we can continue to be more competitive with our neighbors.
Okay. Well, my last question is this. Will the passage of this amendment put us down the path of eliminating the state income tax at some point?
Yeah, I 100% believe that. I think that this is the kind of fiscal reform. I get that it's a lot, this big, bold changes, but I think anytime you've basically got 50 years of stuff being piled on, you gotta do something different, because frankly, I'm very passionate about this, not because I authored it, but because I love Louisiana. I'm passionate about this state, born and raised here.
You even named your dog Louisiana.
I did. He goes by Louis, but yeah, his name is Louisiana. So look, I love this state, and I'm very passionate about making sure that we get out of the bottom. I'm tired of us being the bottom feeders. We've made great strides in education, moving up to 32nd and rising. We massively improved our tax policy from a national competitive standpoint, and I just think we can do so much better. And Amendment 2 is really the framework and the groundwork to help us take that next step.
Well, I know you worked very hard on this amendment, getting it through the House and advocating to get it through the Senate. I know you visited communities across the state, pushing this very hard. Now, even though you're in your third term, how old were you when you were elected to the House?
I was 27.
27.
Elected. Yeah.
Yeah. Wow. I thought you were like 29, so you're even younger than that.
I mean, 27, 29.
Yeah. Well, look, I was a 26-year-old councilman, but certainly haven't accomplished everything you have, and we appreciate your service. We appreciate you taking time to help provide information to the people across the state, not just in St. Bernard. So thank you for taking these questions. This is the conclusion of our first ever video we're doing called One Take. We shot this all in one take. I'd like to thank the young lady holding that phone in the background. With the steady hands, we appreciate you helping. And just remember to please go vote on Saturday, March 29th. It is the only thing on the ballot in St. Bernard, but there will be some great benefits to the people of our state and to the people of our parish if this amendment passes. So thank you.
Vote yes on Amendment 2.